5 years. That's how long journalist Syran has been documenting the activities of the controversial cult called The Body. His YouTube documentaries have shed light on their practices. In this video, we delve into Syran's experience, the harassment he's faced, and the story he refuses to let go untold. I'm not gonna lie, I've been down a bit of a rabbit hole. I was doing a research for a project just about basically a bunch of cults in America. Like, is there a cult in every state? That's kind of what I'm looking at. And looks like there is, but I got stuck in Alaska and went down a massive rabbit hole on The Body. And from what I can see, you're the only person that's really covered it in so much detail. There's the website, your whole YouTube channel. So I was wondering, like, how did you get involved in all this cult hunting yourself?
Well, what happened was I was a journalist working for a paper in Minneapolis, and there was a story about this guy who was killed in Alaska. This really I mean, everywhere in Alaska is kind of remote. Just the very low population. It's huge. And I started following this story, and I found a source who was a reporter, and I really trusted everything that she said. She had really good information, or I thought she did. She was super, like, politically connected. And then I found out she was in this cult. Like, several people told me that she was in at a certain point, like, I had to believe that it was true, and started looking at records, local records in Alaska where the cult had come up and been a part of like several divorce cases and stuff. A lot of the information leaked that way, and it was this horrifying story. This cult, and I had spent so much time with this woman who was in it that I was like, this is a story. And I guess the pandemic happened too, so I went back through records, talked to more people. And then I decided, during this pandemic, the magazine I worked for shut down. I was like, I'm going to do this for a year. And now it's 2025 and I'm still doing it, I guess.
I mean, you've made some really great documentaries, I guess is what I would call them. Your videos you've done on YouTube are a compilation of all of these audio recordings and evidence and things that you've gathered. So you didn't start like out as like a cult researcher or anything like that. Was it true crime? Is that what you were kind of doing then?
Well, honestly, like, most of the stuff I wrote was about, like, culture. I wrote a lot of, like, music reviews and stuff. And then I found out about this story. I thought it was the homicide story. I thought it was super compelling. The whole question was like, this guy obviously murdered somebody and only got 2.5 years, and somehow, like, some favors were done for him along the way. He had a very rich family. I just decided I wanted to do something bigger, and then I went on this odyssey where my brain kind of got scrambled by this woman, and I was so fascinated, like what happened, like when I was parroting what she was saying, like, what was happening to me. And I started researching cults and researching, kind of talking to cult survivors, talking to cult experts. And at that time too, I had like an excuse to do it because I worked at a paper and could pitch, like you were doing a story about, like, is there a cult in every state? I was doing a story about the history of cults in Minnesota, where I got to interview all these, like, people locally, and people who have been here, and talk to cult experts and linguists, and talk to people who would be able to shine a light on what had happened in my world. And I became instantly fascinated. And then it's really weird. Everybody thought I was kind of crazy when I started going down the cult rabbit hole. But then, like, a year later, Netflix and Amazon and HBO are all coming out with these cult stories. The world becomes fascinated with cult stories. And it's like, hey, maybe I can, like, do this, like, full time and do my research and really go down the rabbit hole. So it was kind of like just very fortunate timing too.
Yeah, well, we're on year 5 now, so 5 years of looking at this. insane group in Alaska, the body. Could you summarize it? Because I guarantee you, most people watching this video right now will have never, ever even heard of it. So do you think you could give a little summary of what this group is?
So the body is like it's this highly secretive group that formed out of a Bible study about 20 years ago, a little more than 20 years ago. And it was kind of like a family thing. Like people left this one church and they would pull others into it. And then you had this preacher, the cult leader, came up from Texas to Alaska and took over the group. And he was like, "Hey, surprise everybody, I am actually God." And or I am the he's the second coming. So you've got this group in Alaska. They have this land, and you've got this guy who does these like really long fasting, stays in a yurt for like 40 days. It's like a tent that you can kind of live in. It's a little more advanced, bigger, more space. This place had like a bathroom in it too, and like plumbing. But he came back and he was like, "Hey, I went to hell during this fast. I defeated Satan and I brought all these sins back, and now we can enjoy these sins." And these were a lot of this stuff was like sexual. A lot of people call the body a sex cult, and I don't know like if I disagree with that because that's certainly the stuff that has risen to the surface in in the information that I have and talking to former members, and there's definitely like there's an obvious sexual component to it.
No, no, Daddy, not Jesus, Daddy told me. He said, "You've done all I required of you, and I will require no more." You get to find out everything about my body. So you know me so intricate.
That then like the group split off, like people started finding out in Alaska, like it was a rumor in town that there was a cult in the woods. And they kind of got exposed, well, a little bit. Like nothing was ever written about them or anything. But the town they were in, Nikiski, is so small that like as soon as somebody knows, like everybody knows. And then they moved to Hawaii for a while. Now they're in Okanagan County, Washington, which is a really remote space by the Canadian border, and they have like their new compound. There's been so much that has happened, I guess. Like it's hard to sum up. There's a big court case that just ended at the end of last year, but it didn't get covered. I mean, one thing, like I said at the beginning, like I got in contact with this group because of a member of the media, a reporter who was in the cult. And one thing that they have done remarkably well is control well, not remarkably well, they've made mistakes, but they've controlled the narrative. And mostly it's about being in really isolated spaces where there is no media that's going to come down on you. Like that's why they're sort of unknown.
Yeah, well, I'd never heard of it, and your coverage of it is very extensive. You've got the what's the name of the website? The Body International. Is that the website?
Mhm. Or it's
You know,
cultstories.com too.
Cults cultstories.com. I'm certainly gonna, encourage everyone to go over and, listen to your documentaries and check out your, website stuff as well because it's absolutely fascinating and it's so hard to sum it up.
I would say one thing is that probably the thing I'm most proud of is this podcast I made. It's also called Cult Stories. First episode is called Deployable Agent. It takes about a year to make every episode. So this is going to be a long play. But the story of like how I got into this world, how I got connected with this reporter and this murder story, all of that is in the first episode of the podcast. It's a deep dive. That is.
Well, I will make sure people go and check that out because it is absolutely fascinating. We touched a little bit on some of the elements of this cult leader. Now, is there a reason we can't say his name? Is there some legal stuff going on with that or what?
The leader of the cult, his name is Marc Bisset. The guy underneath him, his name is Gary Everett Parker. Like I can say their names now. When I started the website, though, I mean, a lot of that stuff just hasn't been updated. But I was told at the beginning, if I use their names, when I talked to a lawyer, and the lawyer was like, "You're going to get sued if you just go after these people because there's nothing else out there." But at a certain point, other media outlets started covering the story and using their names. And so now I am free to do it without being scared that they wouldn't be able to sue me, is the thing.
Well, that's good to know. It means I can put a nice big picture of his face here and
Yeah.
and put his name up as well. So he's the second coming of Jesus. Has been and fought Satan and come back. Um, and now is running this small group. How many people were in this group?
I think that back in Alaska, there were probably about 35. And then in Washington State, where they are now, they have like picked up some people, but I think that their numbers have decreased pretty steeply. Just even the little bit of exposure that they got, it kind of like the stuff that I do, unfortunately, like it drives the people who are the biggest believers deeper into it. They start to think like, it becomes like we're being persecuted, and this is not fair, and they get further and further into it. But when you start exposing a cult, all the people that are kind of on the fringes or haven't a reason to leave will kind of like, even if they don't like it, even if they don't like me, it kind of pushes them off of the bad thing at the center. So it's gotten small. I would say today is it probably less than 10 people, but I don't know. I mean, I it's such a secretive group. I do know people who have left, and I've done the math in my head. I think that the group is in its final stages, but at its height, probably 35 or more people. It's never been a huge cult. Like the secrecy, they don't really recruit the way that like Scientology recruits. They don't recruit um they don't have any sort of like media. Well, they are involved in the media, but they don't have any like presence where you can go and watch their videos online or anything. It's very difficult to find a picture of the guy. It's very like the pictures I have from the group, they all look pretty normal. They don't get weird haircuts or anything. They just look like conservative everyday folks, and they blend in. So it's unclear how many members there are, but I can kind of see throughout history. Usually, when there's some kind of schism in the church, you find out more data.
What makes this not just a, extreme kind of branch of Christianity? And, what do you think defines it as a cult?
It's the control. I mean, it always goes to the control. You have women who get split from their families and they don't see their kids for 10 years or ever again. And they think that they're doing the right thing. I mean, it's the family separation is a really obvious, like that's a sign of a cult. And just the control that these people have, the way that they are able, like even the stuff like I was saying before with like the media and infiltrating like um uh government agencies and stuff like that. They've done a remarkable job with control, and it's all classic cult stuff. I mean, it's very there's nothing um about the body that I would say you would see if you went to like a Catholic church. It's an in-home church. Like everybody meets several times a week in these homes and stuff. Everything's a secret. The outside world is bad and dangerous, and you can't go anywhere near it. And Mark knows everything. Like he's there are people in the cult who will literally do anything that he says because he has that level of control. That's not what you would find at like a Lutheran church. This is very fundamentalist. There's a lot of Hebrew in it. It's a sort of like we are gonna go back to like the world as Jesus experienced it, but in reality, they're what they're doing is very unconventional, and it's all the words of Jesus and everything are twisted for this system of control.
When we're talking about cults and the kind of atrocities people commit within them, who is responsible? You said Mark knows everything. Obviously, the members and things have their own autonomy as well, but with the control aspect, who's responsible for such things as the child abuse and things like that that goes on in this group?
I mean, what happens is that the members become complicit in the control. Like it starts with Mark and this guy Gary underneath him, like they call the shots. But the reality of the situation is that you have people doing things that are not in their own best interest or abusing children, stuff like that, who are underneath, and they are just like Alexandra Stain. She's a cult expert from the UK who was in a cult for 10 years, and Robert J. Lifton. He was like a psychologist. He gave us the word brainwashing. They define this as like the deployable agent. A deployable agent is somebody who is so brainwashed that they will do literally whatever the leader says. So these members of the cult that are doing these things, they are like they are no longer really in control of their lives. And the best example of this is 9/11. You have like the cult leader is sitting back home watching this stuff happen on TV while these members are flying planes into buildings and ending their own lives, ending the lives of all these people. They're convinced that something good is going to happen to them. That's like, or I mean, you could look at a lot of cases. Like Charles Manson didn't kill anybody, like himself. So these cult members did. Like it's the system of control itself relies on this factor of deployable agents. You see this also in Scientology, where like the people who really get their hands dirty. It's not David Miscavige. It's it's the underlings that are walking around with cameras and like intimidating people and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's what makes it such a difficult thing of who actually is responsible, isn't it? Like, because I always think the only way to, get some of this stuff, I don't know, is shut down the wrong word? Is that controlling to be like, "It should end," you know?
I'm 100% on the side of this stuff should end. Like, I want to see the body dismantled. I want to see Scientology dismantled. I want to see any cult because the thing is that the making it's mental slavery. They're putting people in mental slavery. They're making people, they're taking away their autonomy, and that's not okay. Like we live in 2025. Like we shouldn't live in a world with slavery, and that's what these cults do is they inflict slavery on people. They do horrible things to families. I mean, if you look at just like the separation, like people. I've heard so many stories of cult members that like didn't attend their parents' funeral because the parent was like was a she was an evil spirit or a demonic presence or something, and obviously that's not true. So I think I'm totally okay with saying end of the cults, end the
Yeah.
madness.
Yeah, how do we do that exactly?
I think that it's all about education. I think that it's what's nuts to me is like you're looking at this story. Is there a cult in every state in the United States? I guarantee the answer is yes. There's thousands of cults, and it's something that people fall prey to, and you see horrible results. We know that like cults do bad things to people and make them. I mean, if you just think about like the last cult documentary you saw, like something bad happened, or they wouldn't put it on Netflix. And that's the case. You could literally go into any of these stories and see fascinating, terrible things that are happening. And everybody thinks that they are not vulnerable to it. Everybody has this idea in their head that they cannot be brainwashed because they're too smart or they're too independent or whatever. And that is like the thing that will probably lead you into a cult is being so confident that you will never see the warning signs. Um, we need to teach people. I mean, also I would say like there should be education about middle school age that has to do with like when I was growing up, they did all these seminars where they told us that if we smoked weed, we were gonna die in car accidents and stuff. Instead of doing that, they should have domestic violence and controlling relationships and cults. Like there should be an hour seminar that every kid has to sit through, where it's like these are the warning signs of toxic group. These are the warning signs of a controlling relationship, like that kind of stuff. Because then people might be like, oh, like they would see it in their lives and be like, hey, this person is trying to control me. They don't want me to have any outside information.
I honestly, I think that's a great idea. That's an amazing idea, and I don't know how we would go about getting that implemented, but it it, it actually would make such a huge difference, wouldn't it? I remember being at school, and I grew up with Scientology parents, and when it kind of started to come out, I'd be like, yeah, like I get lie detected at home sometimes, to my teachers. They were like, what? And yeah, and it's how do you deal with that? They had no sort of training on that kind of thing, as well. So I think, students and staff probably could benefit from, learning about high control groups. What a good idea.
That's,
Um,
I mean, I think it's all that this is about most of my information that I cite comes from Alexander Stain. Um, she is very much a proponent that there should be education, and it's true. It's true of like anything that the real answer is to have a public that is educated and that has access to the information. Like the body, nobody knew that this was going on. I couldn't believe that nobody knew this was going on when I started hearing about it and when I started pulling court records and stuff. And these people were just like in the community, and the citizens were sitting ducks because they had no idea what these people the way that they come across it seems so normal at first, but like you get underneath, you learn about it and it's anything but. And that has kept people away from the body. It's just the education, journalism. But I really think that it should be because closed cults are so closely tied to controlling relationships, domestic violence. I think that should be something that like it's an important enough issue. It affects enough people that it should literally be taught in school.
yeah, I agree with you a million%. We know doing this sort of education stuff, you can kind of become a bit of a target out here. And I've seen
Oh
I've
yeah.
seen you described as the Shakespeare of disdain, the cult hunter, the internet blogger. What what have you had? What's been your experience with the kind of backlash of going after a group like this?
Well, I mean, it's funny because they'll do anything but call me a journalist, and sometimes they fail miserably. Like calling me the Shakespeare of disdain. I did say something very rude to that reporter that he couldn't publish, but like it's funny. Like you can see it from the outside, but if you're inside the group and you read that, it's like, oh yeah, he is the cult hunter. The weird thing about calling me the cult hunter is they're almost admitting to being a cult. That's weird.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, completely. I mean, have you obviously name calling is one thing. I look a lot into like fair game and stuff with what Scientology do. They go after, you know, all of their critics through websites or trolling, or even up to people stalking you and following you around. Have you experienced anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a guy show up at my house with some giant envelope once. That was terrifying. There was a guy who was following me in my car to my job at a restaurant for a while. That was weird. It was not just a random thing. There are these like it's kind of like gang stalking. The reality though, all this stuff that they're trying to do is trying to like cults all do this. Like all these tactics, generally, the cult is not gonna like kill you and dismember you and stuff. What they're gonna do is make you terrified. They're gonna make you terrified. They're gonna make you think about what you do next. They do not want the next story to drop, the next thing. They want you scared. But they also know at the same time that like if anything happened to me, uh God bless. Hopefully this does not happen anything bad. But if something terrible happened to me, if I get shot, I think that people would realize right away who did it and the cult would be over. And the cult doesn't want that. I mean, like it would be the I would be comfortable with them making a fucking martyr out of me if they really really want to. But they don't want to do that. What they want to do is they want to make me scared. They want to make everybody scared. I mean, we talked a little bit about this in the email. Like Paulette Cooper with Scientology, like she released a story that it was kind of the first big story that a book that said L. Ron Hubbard is a cult leader and Scientology is a cult. And what ended up happening, the stuff that they did to scare her, they sent letters to everybody in her building. She lived in, like Brooklyn or something like that. There's 300 people in her building. They sent everybody letters that said like she had venereal disease and was abusing children. They broke into her house, stole her stationery, which had her fingerprints on it, and wrote a bomb threat to themselves, called the FBI, and this woman almost went to prison for this fake thing that it was all but the whole thing, if you look at everything they did to her, it was all designed to scare her into silence.
Yeah, had it not been for the FBI raid, that she would have gone to jail
Yeah, I think
100%,
so.
which is so terrifying, isn't it? I'm so glad she was able to even tell that story afterwards. I don't know many people that would survive through something like that. One question on something you mentioned before. What was in the envelope? The giant envelope that someone
I
brought
had
to
no
your
idea.
house?
I thought I scrambled inside and locked the door and locked all closed all my windows, and I would that worked as far as terrifying me. I was very very scared. But I kept watching. I saw the guy leaving his car out my bedroom window, and I came outside to look at where the envelope was, but the guy didn't leave it. He took it with him. So I don't know what was in there. It was a thick envelope. I don't know what I have no idea what it was, but I recognized it instantly. I was outside, I was having a cigarette, and I saw this guy park in the middle of the road and just make a beeline towards me. And I was like, that's somebody from the cult. He had an envelope. When he got close to me and saw I was scrambling inside, he was like, this is only going to take a second. It's like, well, you park your car in the middle of the road to come after me. Like, I know who you're with. This is not like a normal thing that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Very sus, as the kids would say. You're obviously online and posting about this stuff. Is there a safety in, sharing with TikTok and sharing on YouTube? Do you still feel fear now, or how would you feel now?
I mean, they will like it's never gonna stop. The sort of tit for tat. I can't put an end to that. But there is safety in the community, and there is safety. I would say this to anybody who is thinking about making content about an experience they had or knows something they want to put information online because it's not there. That's where I started from. It is a little scary to do this, and perhaps they will try to scare you. But like I said before, there's a safety to it where like they can't really do anything to me anymore because like they know I'm gonna put it on the internet. They know that if I'm still able to talk about like they're gonna have to do something super, super evil scary to get me to stop talking. And people would recognize that. People would be like, where is this guy? Why haven't we seen him? There is a safety, I think, in telling stories. But this is the reality is like in Mexico, these journalists who cover the cartels, a lot of times they end up disappear. Like being a journalist historically is kind of a dangerous job. Being a whistleblower is kind of a dangerous job. Like we've got this Edward Snowden is in Russia right now, living in I don't know where he's living in some building he never leaves, and he's been there for years and years and years. And because he told us that the United States was spying on its own citizens, now we live in a world where TikTok is going to get banned tomorrow because TikTok is spying on. But we know Facebook is spying on us. We know the phone companies are like we know this stuff. But being a whistleblower has drawbacks. But it is one of these things. It's fundamental to democracy.
Mm. I mean, given all that, given the danger of journalism and whatnot, why do you do it then?
It's something that, like, I started a long time ago. My first byline, George W. Bush was president when I published my first story in a paper. That was, I don't, I don't even know how long ago that was now. We're talking about almost 20 years. Um, and it's just something that I love. I like to be creative with my stories too. My stuff is not kind of what you would see on CNN or whatever. I do ridiculous things sometimes. I act out sometimes and then put it on the internet. I don't have any problem. I want to entertain people at the same time. Like, I want my stories to be interesting. I think this stuff is interesting, and I know if I just like read you facts about the body, people wouldn't be all that interested in it. Like, you have to do what you're doing. Have create a platform, and this is how the show works, and this is something that people can watch and learn something, and but the stories are also entertaining. Cult stories are inherently interesting. And I think it's important to have that kind of outlet in my life. I don't. I mean, honestly, it's one of these things. Like I said before, I was only going to do this for a year, and now here I am doing it now, and I doubt I'll ever stop. I may do other projects, but the cult stuff, I'm never going to turn it off because it's also something where you meet people who are like, you meet the survivors. You meet the survivor who's been out for like a week and is a little rattled. uh, that's the kind of stuff, like, you can't turn your back on those people once you, are, like, working on stories with them, and you have to you sort of have an obligation, or kind of like it's all in my head. Like, it could be something, maybe I could turn it off with therapy or something. I do go to therapy, but, there is, like, to me, I feel an obligation to s to help the next person who's thinking about, Damn, this guy's got some really great ideas. Everybody says he's so great, or everybody says that this person is so great." To inform the public that something is wrong in these waters, and I guess, this is a long answer, but like the internet too. Like, we live in the future. There are all these tools that are becoming available to us. You can have a show on YouTube. That's like that you can have a TikTok until tomorrow. In the United States.
You think Mr.
You
Beast will buy it?
I don't know. I don't know what's this is my theory, and it could be total BS. But what I think is going to happen is that it's going to go dark for a little bit of time, and then Donald Trump is going to be like, "Oh, the people are so upset about TikTok. We brought it back here," and he's going to do this sort of savior thing.
Mm.
He's kind of in like a popularity like everything he's done for the past few weeks is all about his own like popularity, and it's kind of always been the case, but he's kind of become like a weird culty populist sort of person lately.
Is
That's
MAGA
what
a
I think.
cult?
It has a hell of a lot of similarities to cults. Stephen Hassan, the foremost expert of cults in the United States. I don't know if that's necessarily that he calls himself that. It's recognized. Uh, he says Trumpism and MAGA is a cult. Alexander Stain says it's a cult too. Yanya Lalich says it's a cult. These are cult experts. If it has just a lot of the same DNA. It's really hard though when you talk about groups that, I mean, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of people that are into MAGA, and a lot of them are kind of like they just want cheaper groceries. It's the people who are like, they're separated from their families, like they can't go to Thanksgiving anymore. Like, those are the people that are in a cult. Like, the people who are just like they're losing their job because they're posting crazy stuff online. They start believing like all these conspiracy theories. They're trying to like take the fluoride out of the water and stuff. Like these are the people that are in a cult.
Yeah, I mean, extremes are bad. That's what we know, right? Extremes are bad.
But you could be, I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily true because, like, we just had David Lynch just died. David Lynch's stuff, his movies, were extreme in their own, like, unsettling extreme. Art can be extreme. People can do extreme things that are interesting. You look at a lot of musicians that are, kind of extreme people, and but they're not harming anybody. What it is that once people use their authority to take down others, to exert their control over them, and just do whatever they can to have power over people, and they're power hungry and money hungry, and they just want like they're narcissists. I mean, most of these people I would say are psychopaths. That because the problem with being a cult leader, like being David Bowie, you could be weird and do it all the time and just be David Bowie and be cool. A cult leader has to live this lie where they pretend to be somebody like David Bowie. They're not, but they have to live the lie 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They have to put on this mask.
Sounds
Um,
exhausting.
it sounds exhausting. Exactly. And it would, the only way it's not exhausting is if you're kind of on the psychopath, sociopath spectrum.
It's very, very interesting. With you mentioned about sort of abusive relationships. It can be like narcissistic abuse, or and how similar that is to cults. And often, the people that notice it are the people on the peripherals, or your friends and family members and things like that. I sometimes get messages from those people that know someone that's joined a group or has it in a relationship, and I'm never really sure what kind of advice to give them on how to help. What would you say to those people wondering how to help their family member?
Yeah, I mean, part of the insidious thing of cults is that they push these people away. They say if anybody questions the group, don't listen to them. Like push. You don't need that person in their life. They're a suppressive person or whatever. They're trying to harm you. Like you're not gonna make any breakthrough or whatever if this person is in your life. You need to cut them out. What I would tell these people, I guess, like the advice that I hear from the people who know more than I do, is that do not say you are in a cult. Like I do that, but I also know the drawbacks of what I do. What you're supposed to do is ask the person questions. Just be like, "Hey, I'm curious about this. Like, I'm curious about this. Will you just tell me about it?" And have a conversation without accusing them of being a part of anything, without accusing. Don't talk about the leader, or if you're going to talk about the leader, just like ask questions like, "Where did this guy go to school? What are the credentials? Where did this woman? It could be a woman. Like what's going on here? I'm just curious. I want to know." And sometimes people will open up in those situations. Sometimes you can give them, don't say like, "I know all this bad stuff about the group," but it's more like a curiosity. What you want to do is get the person. Everybody has doubt. Doubt is a part of everybody's life. Even if you're deep, deep, deep in a cult, you have doubts. And you want these people to talk about this themselves, talk about their experience themselves, talk about things that, and stop themselves maybe from saying something, but you want to put the doubt in their head, and you want it to be them that puts the doubt in their head. And like Yanya Lalich will say, it's kind of like a stack of books on your back where you can balance them for a while, but like at a certain point, like you put one, the whole shelf is going to collapse.
Yeah, I think that's good advice as well to uh, get them to originate the doubts themselves by looking at it non-judgmentally and logically. I think that's yeah, I think that's really good advice
And
actually.
you have to understand that like if somebody is in a cult, their critical thinking is going to be impaired. It's not going to be that's just a part of it. Is that if you are in a cult the way the system works is that it gets you it sort of disables your critical thinking. You start having like it's more a little more magical thinking. Um which doesn't always mean it could be a self-help group or something like that. Um but you start to have this your critical thinking be undermined, and it helps to have somebody question themselves a little bit, just kind of see like, hey, this other guy, like ask them to ask, if you're talking to somebody who's in a cult, ask them what a cult is, and ask them to describe in a nice way, ask them to describe what makes them a cult and why they're a cult. And as they are describing the cult stuff, you might have a light bulb go on. Like they're not going to be like, "Oh my god, I'm in a cult." That's not going to happen. But it's part of the process. It's kind of like creating a little crack, a little fissure in the belief system.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Thank you for that. You said at the beginning of this interview that we're all vulnerable to joining a cult, and nobody is like so strong of what I can't remember what you said, but basically we can all be fooled into joining one. How do you keep yourself out of cults? What's your advice on that one?
I mean, I would say you have to know that you're vulnerable. Like, if somebody started a cult and it was all about like uh making funny memes on the internet and drinking beer and like having a good time with your pals, but it was really destructive, I might be susceptible to it because I do that kind of stuff. And that's the thing is like a lot of times you look at like a religious cult and it's like, how do these people think? How do they believe that this guy went to hell and fought Satan? But if you were predispositioned in some way, if David Bowie was a cult leader, let's just hypothesize that David Bowie was actually a destructive cult leader and he made you do bad things. If that was the case, I could have joined that cult because I like David
Mm.
Bowie. Like,
Gives a different
there's
feeling to life on Mars, hey?
yeah, I mean, there's the thing is that you don't know what it's gonna look like. People have an idea that like everybody's gonna be wearing robes, everybody's gonna have a weird haircut, and it's gonna be really obvious. But that's not the way cults can take so many different shapes. I mean, just look at like Scientology and all like the businesses they have, and the sort of side hustles that are like, "Oh, we do this too. It's a community operation, outreach, blah blah blah." Like those things, you don't know that it's Scientology at first, and that's the way that they get people. There's not going to be any warning sign that the thing in front of you is a cult. You're going to have to like use your own judgment based on what you see, and a lot of times it could be something that's appealing to you. Every cult works because they have something that is appealing to some people, and it doesn't matter if the whole world joins. They're not aiming for that really, even though some of them say they are. It's about like the people that will be the true believers and make the system work. I mean, you look at like Nexium, that's a cult where there's no God in Nexium. There's nothing religious about it. I mean, there is, I guess every cult has kind of a religious like component to it, well, of like
Yeah, the leader's a
devotion.
sort of deity type thing, right?
Yeah, but there are cults too where like God's not even in the equation. It's just about like making yourself better. Or there's like yoga cults where it's like I want to get fit. There's like there's like a yoga cult for young mothers in the UK somewhere. Um, and that I heard about a while ago. But it's the kind of thing that if you were a young mother and you were trying to get in shape, you would join this thing, and everybody there says the results are amazing.
Mm.
Everybody there says this is the best decision I ever made in my life. And you go, hey, maybe like this is like a good, and you miss the red flags because it aligns with like what you want to see.
Yeah, I've often heard this about the fitness ones, right? Peloton, CrossFit, like can they be bad? Like kind of something that sounds like it's gonna be good, like, "Oh, we're gonna help you improve your fitness." Can it be a destructive cult?
It can be. I mean, there was a martial arts cult. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there was a martial arts cult here in the 90s that was like, if you join this cult, you were going to get fit. You were going to get cut. You would look good naked if you joined this cult. I promise. Like that this is like what's in the record. Like the kind of improvements people saw, but people were driven to like the edge of death by this guy who pushed them into these physical places, and it was a nightmare. Like, and they did all the other stuff that cults do. They would
Mm,
intimidate people who spoke out about them, and it was this. But you would get fit. You were gonna get fit if you joined the cult. I think that some of this stuff, I don't know if like I don't know enough about like is cross. I've heard that before. I've heard about some of these things. There are groups that have culty elements to them that are not actually cults. They're just like they might be a little dangerous since they have that DNA, but not
mm.
every group that has culty elements. It really depends. Like if you can leave and talk about it and criticize them and they're not gonna say anything about it, it's probably not a cult.
Yeah, that's a it's a good one to go by. It's not all black and white, hey, there's so much nuance to some of this stuff, but if they are separating you from your family or doing anything like that, you could be sure it's probably a cult.
I mean, that's the kind of biggest warning sign is like, are you like are your friends asking you to hang out and you're like, I really gotta do this thing for the lead the they won't say the leader, but I really have to be I'm so into this thing. And you see it in relationships too, where somebody gets into a controlling relationship, you're their friend, and you just never see them anymore. Um So there are kind of warning signs. It's hard to see them for yourself sometimes, but there are sort of the true blue cult signs.
Well, you've done your extensive stuff on the body. Are there any other cults you're looking into at the moment that you're hunting down, as they say?
I, there's a story that came out today in the Sun in the UK about it's this cult Educo, and I know the whistleblower in that story. It just came. There was a BBC reporter. She was in this cult. And the story just came out today in the Sun. And I know this story is true. The reporting is really good. Like they really went deep into this story. That I am fascinated with. I mean, it's partially because I have like some inside information about the group, but it was a moment of pure joy today to see that story come out in the news because this guy has been trying to blow the whistle forever, has all this evidence, and these journalists were kind of shutting him out. Like it sounds so crazy that like somebody from the BBC would be in it, but it's true. It's published. Like you can research it yourself. You can look up at Yuko in the Sun. It was printed today. It's published today.
Yeah, I'll have to
Um,
go check that out.
that's
I've heard lots of about it, but I've not seen any, actual media on it, so it'll be good to, yeah,
yeah.
see what the heck that's about.
So that just happened today, and that's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Um, there's also I cover a cult that I used to cover very closely called Profundity Yours. This woman, Linda McGillis.
I'm the first light of creation, the first emanation of light, or what people would say would become the first atom of creation. You can take my picture and you can put it up against any picture of the Magdalene, Mona Lisa, Yeshua, any of the Greek gods and goddesses, any of the pictures. You know, the greatest thing about it is to remain truly humble.
And her cult. I will go back to that story. I kind of did everything that I could for a while. The reality is that like as I was working on that story and kind of getting burned out, and the cult was kind of coming after me, this guy got arrested in the body, and it was like, well, I have to go back to the body, and then because the stories I do are really long. I will cover Linda McGillis again, of course. Like I put out a video about Linda this summer and it got 3.5 million views. Like that's people are interested in that story. People are still being abused by her. So like I'm not gonna stop. I mean, I would I don't know, like we talked about earlier, the goal is to, like, end the bad thing. But so there are many other cults, though. I mean, when we've talked to I keep bringing up Scientology because I'm fascinated with Scientology, because so many stories you can say, like, this originated like, if you want an example of this thing, look at this cult where there's 1,000,000 people, because that you can find an example for just about every cult situation that's existed. I mean, they're not like flying planes into buildings or like poisoning, making mothers drink poison or anything like that. But it's all the destructive habits, all the telltale signs you see there. So I always return to. I mean, Scientology is always going to be interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think they should go down for is the human trafficking aspect of it, because, they take people from all over the world and promise them a good life if they sign this billion-year contract, and get them working. They take their passports away, and even to children they do this. So, it's that's what I think they should go down for.
I think so. I think the money's dirty. In most cults, like every cult has its own system of ethics. L. Ron Hubbard, I mean, that's another thing Scientology is a great example of, because L. Ron Hubbard was literally like, these are the ethics, and these people that attack us are suppressive people, and like cults, just that they operate on their own system of ethics. So you have stuff like human trafficking. The people in the cult don't think that this is a bad thing. Um, and but these things really happen. Nexium, the leader of Nexium, was sent to prison for 120 years for human trafficking. Nobody was ever thrown in a van and made to have sex with him. These people who had sex with him said yes, they consent. They consent is a difficult word there, but like nobody said no. But the judge, the court, was smart enough to know this is human trafficking. Like this is what trafficking is, and it's something that you see all over. And yes, they should. I think that there should be more federal cases.
It drives me insane because I just know how many stories and survivors are out there that have gone through the craziest stuff with Scientology, but with other cults as well. And I think on one of your videos you said, it's not illegal to be a cult leader. It's not. Should it be?
Well, it's really I mean, there's a fact of cults that like they've been with us forever. As long as there have been psychopaths and opportunists, people have said, "I have all the answers. Follow me." And there's benefits when you have a whole bunch of followers who'll do anything you say. And most people don't want to control people, so that doesn't sound like a thing that they want in their lives. But for the psychopaths and opportunists, this is like the best possible thing, is just like power and control. So there will always be cults. It's very difficult to make it illegal. I mean, especially in the United States. Like in the United States, the government was looking into Scientology, which was like a self-help group, and then L. Ron Hubbard was like, "Oh, we're a religion. Forgot to mention that this is actually a religion, and we don't have to pay taxes anymore. We're gonna go on a boat in the waters that are not the United States, and we're gonna have this religion." And it's all a crock of shit. Like it was never meant to be a religious thing.
Well, no, and with the IRS, it was all threats. It was they went after individual agents, just people, accountants, people that just worked for the IRS. They were going after all of them individually because their theory is you can't take down a group, which as we can see on the outside, we always say Scientology should go down for X, Y, Z, but actually it should be, is it David Miscavige? Is it the people at the top of their hierarchy?
Yeah,
Who is
where's his
responsible?
wife?
Is
Can somebody find that guy's wife? Like that's
literally
concerning.
It's
Um,
kind of come out that we think we know where she is, and she's quite happy where she is apparently, but,
yeah,
that's,
apparently. I
that's the
mean,
story.
but like you were saying, should it be illegal to be a cult leader? That's it. It's kind of a question beyond the law. The reason why the United States has more cults than anywhere else is that we have this really absolute freedom of religion, where if you're a religion, you get these powers that are not afforded to you if you started a group in France. That it's just a different system. Um, and you have this stuff where you have these groups that are not religious that can claim to be religious, and then they get these freedoms too. Um, and it's kind of like, but this happens in the UK too, to a certain degree, not as extreme freedom of religion, but there are groups like at this Educo that I was talking about earlier, that it's kind of a self-help, self-realization group, and they've done all kinds of terrible stuff without getting any trouble, because like it's part of it is it's a secret, and part of it is if you're a good cult member, you're gonna keep secrets. Like if you are in a cult and something happens, like you're not allowed to talk about it, and you got to keep the secret. And even if you have to go down for it, you will, because this is the mission. So unfortunately, it's not illegal though to it's illegal to have somebody fly an airplane into a building, but it's not illegal to recruit and sell flowers and stuff. It's not illegal to do many of the things that like the cults learn the laws. The cults learn every system that they can take advantage of.
Thing that always spooks me with Scientology is there's a saying there. I can't remember who this comes from, whether it's Ron Hubbard or whatever, but it says that Scientology is above the law, and by the time anybody wants to contest that they will be in government, so there will be no one to contest it with. And I just think that's so scary, because if that is sort of the aim of some of these groups, they think they have all the answers. You know, who knows what these people are planning?
Yeah, I mean anything could happen. Like I mean, you I most cults are not physically like well, they could be like sexually dangerous or like body autonomy dangerous, but they're not like gonna go out and like something that happens like Heaven's Gate where everybody kills themselves. That is a very, very rare circumstance, but it's the largest mass suicide in American history. 9/11, which is a cult story, that's the largest loss of life in American history. The second biggest loss of life in American history was Jonestown. The most Americans died in one event. Now we got school shooters and stuff, so like then that's a different thing. But if you look at these massive tragedies, you can see what they tell you really is that in a cult, anything can happen. Like anything. Things that you would never even imagine are possible when you have deployable agents, when you have people who will literally do whatever you say.
Yeah, and on that, deployable agents, obviously you mentioned that's on your podcast. It's been like so good to talk to you about this stuff today, Syran. Like, thank you so much for giving up your time to chat with me. Where can people find you? What have you got going on over on your platforms?
I would say the podcast sort of first is only one episode of this show. It takes a long time to make. It's called Cult Stories. The first episode is Deployable Agent. We mentioned that. Website is Cult Stories. I don't do a whole lot on there anymore. I would say Instagram now, because TikTok is going down. TikTok is my biggest audience, and I might lose them all. Here's to hoping that some savior steps in. Um, on TikTok, I'm the Cult Hunter, or at Syran Warner. On Instagram, I am Free Melissa Parker, who's a member of the body. So Free Melissa Parker is my Instagram. And I'm on the internet. Like if you look up my stories or anything, I would say YouTube. Like I put out a documentary about this cult, the body. It's about a divorce case in the body. This summer or last summer. But just kind of like I'll be around. You might even see me back here. You never know.
That would be awesome. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about, for sure. Well, all of those links to everything will be in the description below this video. Go and check Syran out and check out all of his documentaries and socials and things like that. If you want to see him again, please let us know down below what you'd like us to talk about, and we can see if we can make that happen. But until next time, everyone, we will see you later.
It's been fabulous.